This is a print made from the original painting done by Paul Hanover, depicting the falls and the gorge as it would have appeared early in the 1900s from the Canadian side. You can see the old Upper Still Arch or Falls View Bridge, today known as the Honeymoon Bridge, and then of course the American Falls and the Horseshoe. You can also see the Great Gorge route line, the trolleys, electric trolleys that went along the top of the gorge on the Canadian side and on the bottom of the gorge on the American side, and they crossed the old bridge to and from the two countries right here. And the trains went up and about here around the bend and right above the Horseshoe Falls and turned around and then came back again this way and went to the American side, stopped at the station there, and then people got on and went down into the gorge to Lewiston and then crossed over the Lewiston Suspension Bridge to Queenston, Ontario, and then went up to the top of the gorge and rode along the top and back to the falls. So this was a wonderful trip which took over an hour to go around. In fact, it was almost 2 hours, the whole trip. And on the American side, once again, you went into the gorge, and on the Canadian side, you went along its rim at the top.
The reason for the Great Gorge route starting was as a transportation mode. Everybody's aware of Niagara Falls and the rapids both above and below the falls. So coming in, all the tourists coming up from Lake Ontario, from places like Toronto, Hamilton, Kingston, Oswego, Rochester, in order for them to get to Niagara Falls, they rode a steamship up the Niagara River from Lake Ontario, and the furthest they could get up the river towards the falls was the docks at Queenston. So, or across the river at Lewiston. So they would disembark from the steamships and get on the streetcars to travel up to the falls. Transversely, coming down from Lake Erie, from Toledo, Buffalo, Cleveland, Erie, they would have to come down by steamship to the dock, the Slater's dock at Chippewa, board the streetcars, and then come down to the falls. That's the way it started. As the popularity of the line increased because of the scenic possibilities, it became more of a tourist railroad to go and see the sights, as it were, on the side of the streetcars.
Oh, almost every European king and queen of the early 20th century rode on that. So Edward VIII of England rode on it, the king and queen from Belgium, just about every royal person possible. The presidents rode on it. McKinley rode on it the day he was assassinated. Thomas Edison rode on it, and when he rode on it, a daredevil happened to be going through the rapids at the same time, Peter Nissen, and so Edison actually filmed it using regular film when it first came out, and took a picture from the car there on the Great Gorge route of Peter Nissen riding his craft through the rapids into the whirlpools. So that's the first time anyone ever filmed anything at the falls, and it was Thomas Edison who did it.
People would go down on the Great Gorge route trolley in the evening hours because they had a car that had a spotlight on it, and they brought it down to this rapids route viewing area so people could see it lit up at night.
Yeah, see giant waves lit up at night. Just like they have the lights on the falls today, they also used to put the lights on the rapids so that people could see the rapids at nighttime.
So that was, you gotta remember the time frame, you know, to ride an electric trolley and go down and see the falls lit up.
Yeah.
And the rapids lit up with this light had to have been something, a new thing to people.
Yeah, keep in mind that life was much simpler back in those days. You know, we didn't have iPods, we didn't even have the telephone or anything like that. But the only Blackberries we had were the ones you ate. We didn't have, so people, you know, things like that, looking at the rapids at night with a spotlight on it was a big deal. Today the kids probably, oh well, but back in those days it was a big deal. The wooden yokes across with the pails on for hauling the rock. So once they blasted the rock, used the dynamite or whatever to blast the rock, then they would use the pails and they would actually carry it, either dumping it into the river, or at the beginning of the railroad when they started at Lewiston, such as that picture, they could bring it up and then they would haul it away in horse and wagons. But it was all horse and wagon. They didn't have bulldozers, they didn't have backhoes, steam shovels. It was all manual labor. And they built the whole line on the American side from Lewiston up to the city of Niagara Falls for $800,000. This is taken from the Whirlpool Bridge looking down at the rock slide. And there was so much rock onto the track, it just wasn't worthwhile cleaning it off. And that the advent of the automobile and the popularity of the automobile and buses, it just, the declining revenues, it just wasn't worthwhile rebuilding it.
Well, Canada backed out. They wanted to be freed of it in 32.
Yeah.
And so it kept running on the American side. Well, you just had the Depression era and the introduction of cars also. I did read that this shale slide happened, they believe, in the early hours of the day. So there were no injuries when it happened. They just they did their first run in the morning, and when they got there is how they found it.
Yeah. So that's the photograph of the rock slide, and that was actually, if you can see on this photograph here, this is the Whirlpool Bridge, and it happened right here. That's what ended it. Right?
Oh wow! To ride in one of the trolleys, especially in the summertime, it's a very unique trolley system. Probably the most unique that's ever existed in the world, because of the fact that you went into a gorge, a dangerous situation, very dangerous situation, and most of the time were able to use it and enjoy it. And of course, it was part of the aura of Niagara, the fact that you were in that gorge produced by the falls, and then you went near the falls, especially on the Canadian side, when the trolleys would turn around by the Horseshoe Falls and head back towards the American side over the Upper Steel Arch Bridge. And so it was an exciting experience, and the ride was totally new. Nothing like it in the world.